I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for today's live webinar entitled Streamlining Environmental Monitoring with LabWare LIMS, Maximizing Efficiency and Compliance. My name is Kevin Miller with Astrix. It's my pleasure to get the session kicked off today. We'll go to the next slide. I'm going to go through a couple of introductory slides before we get into the meat of the presentation, just so you have a sense of who Astrix is. If you haven't been a part of our long history of great webinars here, we're grateful to have you. If you've been part of our webinars, thanks for popping back in. Quick company snapshot. We can go back to that slide real quick. So I just want to run through that. Thanks. So a couple of quick facts about who we are. Established in 1995. When we say vendor and platform agnostic, what that means is we're giving you a presentation today about LabWare. And we certainly have deep expertise in a lot of systems like LabWare, but we don't specifically financially represent any of these organizations. We are very much an agnostic organization. We try to help our customers figure out the right technology based on their individual needs. We operate from locations in the US and overseas and have over 2,000 employees. One of the things we're extremely proud of is that greater than 90% of the team members here hold advanced science degrees. We're very much a science-based organization who helps science-based companies. And the sectors that we work in would be startups to Fortune 1000, so all ranges and sizes. We work with life science enterprises, companies that deal in chemicals, consumer products, government agencies, or research institutions, generally speaking, most organizations that have some form of an R&D lab or some form of R&D presence. Let me go to the next slide, please. So in terms of the services, we are a professional services firm. So what are those services? What are they all about? We provide services that accelerate digital transformation and optimize performance across your entire ecosystem. That's our high level message. We do that by working with companies in a wide array of areas, starting with strategic innovation and enterprise architecture. Those type of services are typically helping you understand what your business processes analysis is going to look like, what your user requirements are going to look like, helping you figure out application roadmap implementations, right? The very beginning of figuring out the right technology and what the right solutions are going to be to put in place, and what the architecture is going to be like to support that, whether that's integration, whether that is strategy, whether that's data. We help with that. And then we help with the actual selection of solutions. We help you pick the right technologies based on maybe what we found in those first two engagements. From there, we can help you develop and implement that systems. We can then help you validate it, make sure that it meets all of the requirements of the FDA. From there, we can provide ongoing application support. We can provide support like level 2 and level 3, enhancements, upgrades, etc., training. All that is provided by Astrix in different models. And then we can even go as far, one of the things that makes it really unique is we can even go as far as staff your laboratory. We can staff with either technical personnel or R&D personnel, scientists. So that's a quick look at the overall breadth of who we are, what we do, and the services that we bring to bear. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today and turn it over to their capable hands and take you through the rest of the presentation. Rich Pettis and Isabella Fasciano are joining us today. Rich is a business analyst here at Astrix. He's an experienced and accomplished one at that. Worked quite a bit in lab informatics, over 30 years experience in the life science industry. He's worked for companies like Pfizer, Merck, BMS, and Syneos. Isabella comes to us with 17 years of experience in the industry. She has expertise in project management, systems analysis, LIMS, LIS, crystal reports, etc. So a wide array of technologies she's worked with. So I'm excited to hear both Rich and Isabella give their presentation today. So with that, Rich, I'll hand it to you, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy what you have to say.
Hello and welcome to our presentation, which we'll be talking about how LabWare LIMS can streamline environmental monitoring in your labs. So we have a couple of questions we're going to address. So first one is, why do we perform environmental monitoring? What are the challenges that EM brings to your lab? How can LabWare EM, the LabWare EM template, be used to seamlessly implement EM using the existing LIMS? What is the normal workflow for the LabWare EM template? And then after we've addressed these topics, we'll have some time left for questions. So why do we perform environmental monitoring? EM performs a vital function. So as stated, in organizations or industries where there's purity measurements that are required for health or regulatory needs, What it does is it screens and manages contaminants in both internal and external locations. What are the common challenges that EM brings in your labs? Some of them are, for example, maintaining or adjusting sampling schedules. So depending on the size of your lab, you can have a wide variety of schedules, that you need to maintain. You want to make sure that they're all processed. The more schedules, the bigger the company, the more samples. Then you have to enter results for all of those samples. And that can be time consuming if you have to do it all manually. Then there's the issue of if you have out of specification results, what if they're not identified properly, and they're not covered in the radar. What about reviewing and approving all of those results? We want to track the chain of custody of those samples, where they've been and where they are in the process. We want to record all of these events. And then we want to have a reporting tool that looks at all this data and giving you in a readable format so that you can make important decisions on that data. How can LabWare EM be used to seamlessly implement EM with the existing LabWare LIMS? So in LabWare, the schedules are controlled and maintained. They can be run at defined times and intervals or manually needed. So if you have routine samples, you can define them at any interval that you like. But if you have ad hoc samples, it can accommodate them as well. Then it maintains sample and collection processing. So we have all of that, the distribution and collection information and incubation readily available. All plans are preset, but they can be added on demand as needed. System can interface with all instruments. Results can be entered, reviewed, and approved in bulk instead of one at a time. You can handle all of that all at one time. And then LabWare supports tablets and live use in labs and also analytical test batches. The system visually indicates by flagging them in red any results that are out of specification. So as soon as something is out of spec, you can see it right there. All actions are recorded in an audit trail, so you know when and who and what a particular action was performed on a sample. The system has security controls so that depending on your function in the lab, that's what you'll be able to do in the system. So for example, a system admin will be able to do everything in the system, but if you are just entering data, you'll only be able to do any data entry functions. The system has logical controls to stop samples from being processed before required actions are recorded. So for example, you can't enter data for a sample unless it's been received, or you can't approve a sample unless all the results have been entered. Okay, and then the system has a sample management section. Where reports are concerned, there's a multiple array of reports that are already included in the system, such as trending, but any report can be created as well as needed. The template itself can be used independently, or it can be added to your existing LabWare system, and then updates from time to time maintain it. The template can be used for any industry, and there's visual workflows that are included in LabWare in case you need more information about how to handle a particular step in the process. It'll guide you through those complex processes. And then in terms of the workflow, LabWare EM workflow works with these 5 steps. We have the schedule, the plan, collect, lab, and report. So under schedule, we have that the schedules can be run either automatically or it can be run manually. All the schedules have detailed information, the sample types, the testing assigned, and it's all done automatically. with plans, you can associate samples either to a user, or you can associate it with a group. They're preset, but they'll also be done on demand. Under collect, we have information that's recorded, such as when distribution starts and ends, the collection for all the collection for all the samples, including the personnel samples, and you have various collection options that are available. And under lab, we have such things as sample receipt, the incubation information. There's existing LabWare testing functionality. We can enter results in bulk. It can perform complex calculations. There's the instrument interface. There's evaluation against out-of-spec results and the flagging in red of any that are out of specification. And then we have the analytical test batches, and then we have the signature and approval. And then the report section, we have the reports that come with LabWare, such as trending, and then we can also have them tailored for clients and for compliance. And then there's different ways that you can view the information on a report, such as pivots, pivot tables, and flexible search. And we have within LabWare, we have the different buttons that take you directly to the corresponding workflow. In this case, we have the EM management button that will take you to the EM home. Once we're in the EM home, we also have additional buttons that each one that's clicked will take you to other workflows. And with that, I'll give you to Rich.
Isabella. Thanks everybody for joining. Okay, and let's continue. So the first workflow we're going to talk about is scheduling. A schedule is used to define routine sampling that you perform. The schedule in the LabWare EM template, it's easily automated to let you have the scheduling run at whatever frequency you need. It could be daily, weekly, monthly, the first Tuesday of every month, whatever kind of frequency you need to use. It can be run automatically or manually as you need it to be run. The schedules can include multiple sites, rooms, whatever kind of combination of things, and they have very detailed information. We're going to show you in the next slide, but they automatically assign testing, the sample type, the description, all kinds of information. Also, I just want to point out that there's too much in the LabWare EM to show you everything. So we're going to try and show you the most important things and give you an idea of the capabilities. Please, send in questions about anything we might not mention or might not show enough detail about. We know there's going to be things that we don't cover in enough detail, but we're looking forward to your questions. So you get to scheduling by clicking on the schedule button. And when you do that, you get a dialog box that lets you see schedules, and you click on one of them, and that will show you the individual schedule. And here you can see one, and you can see the various columns. If analyses were defined, they would be in this column here. You have other information, specification type here, the stage, sample type, the days of the week that the particular kind of scheduling happens. All that kind of information is defined in the schedule. Okay. A plan is a defined grouping of samples to collect, and these are assigned to either a user or a group of users that are going to be doing the particular collection. The plan is preset, but non-assigned samples, including personnel, can be added on demand. For whatever reasons that you need to do ad hoc samples. Staff has changed for the day, so you have to do different people. Whatever kind of reasons, you can do those. And plans can also include samples from multiple suites or rooms, as long as those suites are part of the plan. The plan workflow. If you were to click on plan right at the top, that you would actually be creating a new plan. You get to existing plans from the EM home. There's a tab there for active EM plans, and there you could see a list of the plans that are there. And if you open that, you see a plan and all the individual samples that are part of it. And you see a bunch of buttons here that give you options, things you can click, and you can add unscheduled samples. You could remove samples, all those sorts of things that they're defined here. You could do all these different actions. Collection. A collection workflow is where sampling occurs by the users that are associated with a plan. The distribution start and distribution end information is recorded here. The collection for all samples, including personnel, is done here. You have a bunch of different options under collection. You could collect by plan, by sample, by folder, by the floor plan view. We're going to show you some of those in the upcoming slides. Okay, you get to this by clicking on the collect button. From there, you can see plans, and when you click to select a plan, the icon actually changes to a checkbox. In LabWare, if you've never used it, a lot of things are indicated and visually confirmed to you by having an icon change. And here's just one of the places where that happens. When you're doing sample collection, you have different options that you could do that can be performed under that. You have collect plan, you have these different options for doing the collection, like we said, folder, personnel, the floor plan view, and they're sitting along the top, but if you right click, you also get that in a menu. This is common to a lot of places in LabWare where you have options someplace, but you can also right click to get them. Distribution start and end. Here's another place where you see the icons changing to indicate the status. Before this sample the distribution happens and is recorded, you see it's not a check. And in here is where you would be doing the distribution and recording information. And here's a picture of it afterwards where it's turned to a green checkbox to indicate. And if it was collected, if the distribution was ended, then the next one is changed also. And this is just showing you collection of a sample that doesn't need distribution, a swab like of a person or a wall, one of those kind of environmental things that you would collect without letting it sit out for a period of time. Here's the floor plan view. This is something that is much nicer in the latest version of LabWare. There are several things in the latest version of LabWare that are really good updates and make it much more user-friendly and nicer to use. If you can actually select a sample from the visual indicator here and perform the actions, and after they're done, it changes to it's green and there's a check there after collection. This is just a picture showing you the personnel collection along with some of the pop-ups that come up during it where you're selecting the suite, the personnel, and the badge information. And here's a picture of one of the labels that can be used. You can scan things in a lot of places in LabWare to get information into the system. In demos, people generally type into these, but in real life, the intention is that people will scan stuff. Store is another function it's over here, but it's where we talk about it. It can be kind of put anywhere, but after collection seems a logical place to talk about it here. Store is where you go to access the storage location manager in the new EM template. From here, you can move samples from one location to another. It could be after they're collected or processed, whatever point that makes sense for you to move them. And if you've used LabWare before, it's using the same functions of browsing and selecting, and you could also scan during this also. It's just organized in a different spot now. Lab is the workflow where most of the sample processing happens. Sample receipt is recorded here. Incubations are performed and recorded. It has and like Isabel said, it has logical controls to stop samples from being processed when they're not at the right status. After you do after you record information and save it, statuses of a sample will change. So that's how it generally knows to not let you receive a sample until it's collected or the distribution happens. These things are dependent on what type of sample and the rules about those kinds of samples. But we have lots of controls in the system to stop you from doing actions accidentally before things are recorded. Like you can't incubate a sample if it's not marked as received. And result entry and other things like that are all set up so that you can't do things until actions are recorded. Under lab, these are things that are in all of LabWare, but are also very helpful inside EM. You can do processes on multiple samples. You can receive multiple samples or do result entry or do whatever sort of actions on multiple samples at once using a sample folder. That's where you do a query or you search and select some samples. And depending on your role, when the window comes up, you would have different actions available to you. If you were just if you were at a level that you could just do result entry, those would be there. If you were an approver, you could do approval of samples in that folder, that kind of thing. Those controls hold there. But it lets you process multiple samples at once. You don't have to receive one sample at a time. Also, all the existing testing functionality is available in EM. You could do bulk results entry, and there are different layouts for that. You can have complex test calculations. You can have a test look at other components on a sample. You could have it check different things. This can interface with different instruments or integration platforms like Empower to collect data for you instead of having to put in everything yourself. The system will automatically evaluate the results, and like Isabel said, it will turn the flask or the vial red when something is out of spec. If the result is good, it's green, and if no results entered, the flask is empty. You'll see that in one of the slides coming up. And also, the system can send emails based upon these the same things. That you can have it set up so that if something is at an alert level or at an action level, that an email is sent to a certain group of people. It also has analytical test batches and e-signatures and approvals in the system, and those can be done in bulk also. Okay, so the lab button lets you get into the lab workflow here. It opens up with several tabs here. The first one is sample receipt, and it shows you samples that need receipt here automatically. From here, you could do a search. So if you wanted to see samples that were collected on a certain day, you could find just those and then select them and do whatever actions you needed to do, like receive them in this case. Incubation, that is done starting from the incubation tab. From here, you have the samples that need incubation. It won't show samples that aren't received yet. If there are samples that are scheduled but they aren't collected yet, they won't show up in here. This is one of those places where the statuses are important, so you need to have certain information there. This is also going to show if incubations are started, and a sample can have multiple incubations. And different information can be displayed in here. And here's just an example of an incubation batch. This is a very simple one with only a couple samples in it. Okay, like we said, results entry, it's not limited to being performed on one sample at a time. You could do it on multiple samples.